A national and human existence of Palestinians has been deeply rooted in their homeland Palestine for thousands of years. Palestine existed on the land of Canaan 3,200 years ago. Some archaeological inscriptions mention the word plast, of which the name Philist was created, and after adding the N, became Palestine. Palestinians blended well with the Canaanites, and ever since, their land was known as Palestine in reference to them. Its boundaries are well defined, stretching from Rafah in the south to the city of Al-Lajoun in Marj bin Amir in the north. The name Palestine, according to most commonly used manuscripts, has been used ever since the Bronze Age, in Abbasid writings, Islamic coins, and ancient maps. The name Palestine remained the most common name used even in Roman, Byzantine, and Islamic ages. Roman phrases were translated by Muslim conquerors, Palestina Seconda to the soldiers of Palestine, and Palestina Prima to the soldiers of Jordan, where Ramla was designated as the capital for the soldiers of Palestine and Tiberias as the capital for the soldiers of Jordan. Palestine is among the oldest areas of the world that had witnessed human settlement, agricultural communities, and civilization. The Palestinians began domesticating animals and planting land, and Jericho is known to be the oldest city inhabited by Palestinians, which was built dating back to BC. What's worthy of living exists on this land, the Empress of all lands, Mother of all beginnings and Mother of all endings. It was called Palestine, and it is still called Palestine. Palestinians coexisted with Jews in their country Palestine, where the majority of Palestinians were Muslims, but some Jews who lived among them held a political agenda that posed a major threat to the indigenous people of Palestine. Jewish money failed to buy Palestine. Their attempts to entice Sultan Abd al-Hamid II, who was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire at the time, to sell the land of Palestine failed. Therefore, the Zionists concluded that force would be the only way to achieve their objective and to dominate this country. By then, infiltration of Palestine and purchases of land had begun by utilizing money provided by the Jewish National Fund. Following the occupation of Jerusalem by the British forces in December 1917, the League of Nations granted Britain a mandate over Palestine in 1922. The government of the British Mandate issued Palestinian passports, Palestinian currency, and Palestinian stamps with pictures of Palestinian historic sites such as the Dome of the Rock and the Church of the Nativity. A dominating danger lingered in the air because of illegal Jewish immigration to Palestine and the beginning of settling migrants into Palestinian land in accordance with the terms of the Balfour Declaration, which called for the establishment of a Jewish state. Palestinian national movements emerged to face and to resist this existential numbness. And ever since, Palestinian national resistance organizations began to proliferate. The 1936 Palestinian revolt had a major impact on strengthening special components of the Palestinian national identity. This was best symbolized and embodied in a poem called Mawtani, written by Ibrahim Toqan. This poem later evolved into a cry against colonialism. Then came the Nakba in 1948. Ethnic cleansing took place where Zionists began to rename Palestinian sites, towns, and villages with their Zionist, nationalistic, and satanic names, in a clear attempt to separate Palestinians from the history of their country and to eradicate it by inventing Old Israel and silencing Palestinian history. During a truce that took place in 1949, hundreds of Palestinian villages were demolished and the indigenous people of the villages were displaced. Zionist gangs burned crops and carried out massacres against Palestinian inhabitants, such as the infamous Deir Yassin massacre and many, many more. The number of these villages, as counted by Palestinian researcher and historian Walid al-Khalidi, is estimated at about 293 villages, 70% of which were completely obliterated, and remnants of these villages still exist to this day. Zionist attacks on the Palestinian population intensified, the Jordanian army responded, where they fought many battles in Palestine and Jerusalem, including the battles of Latron and Bab el-Wad. Then came the 1967 war, which was called Naksa, or the setback of 1967, or the June setback, and it ended with Israel occupying the entire state of Palestine. After Israel had defeated Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, who were supported by Iraqi forces, this resulted with the displacement of 400,000 Palestinian Arabs from the West Bank and Gaza Strip along the Suez Canal, 100,000 displaced from the Golan Heights into Syria, land losses of 69,347 square kilometers area of Arab territory captured by Israel. Jerusalem was and still is the spark of revolutions in the face of invaders. It held the secret to waking up consciences, building up wills, and unifying Arabs. Jews lived in historic Palestine as part of its indigenous people. Palestinians shared their joy and comforted them in times of calamities. A high percentage of Jewish people lived in Palestine, and the numbers drastically increased since the global Zionist movement met in the United States and issued the Baltimore Program, which calls for the establishment of a Jewish entity in Palestine.
על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל, היא מדינת ישראל.
After they witnessed the persecution of Jews in Europe, the arrest, expulsion, and mass killings in the Netherlands, France, Germany, Britain, and Portugal. Then came the Holocaust incident that made everyone sympathetic to their plight, hence became a major reason for creating a state for them. As the Holocaust raged on, the number of Jews in Palestine increased, where they were able to enter Palestine, facilitated by the British Mandate government. Palestinians welcomed them and treated them well, not knowing what they were really planning. Soon after, their political plans were revealed, and Palestinians were faced with displacement and removed from their land. The occupation of Palestine was crafted by the founder of the Zionist movement, Herzl, whom considered the Jewish problem a social issue. He rejected the concept of integrating Jews into other people, since the core philosophy of Zionism is the establishment of the State of Israel.